Story number 28, March Madness. In the two countries, Belafidine and Borealia, which are both the same size, they share a basketball league called the SBBL, Supreme Basketball League. This professional league has 32 teams, 16 of which are in Belafidine, and the other 16 are in Borealia. The two countries have their own conferences with 4 divisions that have 4 teams each. Every season begins on the last Saturday of October. Games normally take place on Saturday afternoons, Monday nights, and Wednesday nights. The Wednesday night games are the latest games, as those games start at 8:30 p.m. The earliest games are on Saturday afternoons, as those games begin at 2 p.m. There is never the inconvenience of a fan having to go to bed during the middle of a Wednesday night game, as the two countries are only in one time zone. Belafidine is just north of Borealia. The playoffs in the SBBL are called March Madness. As the regular season ends on the last Wednesday of February, then the playoffs, aka March Madness, begin on the first Saturday after February 28th. This means that if a leap year starts on a Wednesday, then March Madness games will take place on Leap Day, as the extra day lands on a Saturday in such years. The top 8 teams from each conference make it to March Madness. The seeded matchups in March Madness are 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4, 5 versus 6, and 7 versus 8. This allows each team in March Madness to have an equal chance of making it to the March Madness Championship, which is in a best 2 out of 3 format, with Game 1 being on Saturday afternoon, Game 2 being on Monday night, and Game 3 being on Wednesday night. The championship begins on the 4th Saturday of March Madness. There is this powerhouse team called the Rutherford Hawks, who play for the city of Rutherford Belafidine. This team has had a powerhouse season, finishing the 2024 through 25 season with a record of 46-1-7. They landed a spot in March Madness as the first seed. The March Madness games kicked off on Saturday, March 1st. In Game 1, the first-seeded Rutherford Hawks were taking on the second-seeded Antioch Crusaders. Game 1 ended with a Hawks 132-124 victory. Game 2 ended with a Crusaders 122-117 victory, and Game 3 ended with a Hawks 128-117 victory. As a result, the Hawks were moving on to the second round. The Hawks fans were excited about their team, as their team has a chance at winning their 5th ring. The Crusaders' attempt of winning an 8th ring was shattered by the series loss to the Hawks. The star player for the Antioch Crusaders is Darius Stoddard. He was interviewed after Game 3, which took place on Wednesday, March 5th. He talked about how improvements can be made for the following year, and he had good sportsmanship about the series loss. The Crusaders fans held their heads up high as they just celebrated a good season they had. The Hawks' victory over the Crusaders was actually an upset victory, as the Hawks were the underdogs due to their star player and captain Cody Tompkins being out due to an injury. Cody Tompkins is a brother in Christ who is humble and is also the star player of the Rutherford Hawks. He prays before every game, and he gives glory to Jesus Christ in every post-game interview. When asked questions about topics that are considered controversial, he always responds with the biblical truth, even when it is unpopular. In the second round, the first-seeded Rutherford Hawks were taking on the fourth-seeded Lando Bears. Going into Game 1, fans were hyped and excited. The atmosphere was electric at Epic Face Cafe Arena, which is the home arena of the Hawks. In Game 1 on Saturday, March 8th, the game was quite a nail-biter. Hawks fans who were in sports bars were cheering on the Hawks. The Bears fans also watched in sports bars in their area as well. Game 1 ended with a Hawks 125-116 victory. In this game, Cody Tompkins returns from an injury that caused him to be out for 3 games. Then in Game 2, which took place on Monday, March 10th, this game was nowhere close to a nail-biter as the Hawks were blowing out the Bears. This game was quite one-sided, and the game ended with a Hawks 112-82 victory. Because of how one-sided the game was, the bandwagon Bears fans were leaving the game toward the end of the third quarter. By the way, the Lando Bears has the most bandwagon fans of all teams. In the post-game interview from Popper Sports, Cody Tompkins gave glory to Jesus Christ for the series sweep. Just as soon as he gave glory to Jesus, the camera zapped out, and the commentator for Popper Sports falsely passed that off as a technical difficulty. A lot of Christians saw past that humbly nonsensical technical difficulties claim. Paul Whitaker, who is a church pastor just south of Rutherford, called for a boycott of Popper Sports for the corrupt stunt that this platform pulled. On Friday, March 14th, people across the 2 countries were beholding the total lunar eclipse. Cody Tompkins attended a lunar eclipse party at South Rutherford Lutheran Church, which is pastored by Paul Whitaker. As the lunar eclipse took place, the brothers and sisters in Christ were there. Here we're talking about how God is the best artist as He created the beautiful nature around us. The third round was the Belvedere Basketball Championship, in which the first-seeded Rutherford Hawks were taking on the fifth-seeded Deerite Black Sox. In Game 1 on Saturday, March 15th, the game was a nail-biter as expected, and the game was all fun and games until the end of third quarter when a massive fight broke out in between several of the Hawks fans and several of the Black Sox fans. 13 people were involved in this fight, 8 of whom are Black Sox fans, and 5 of whom are Hawks fans. The fight was so severe that 6 of the people suffered harsh injuries and had to be rushed to the hospital. Fans who were around the massive fight were terrified. The 13 people who were involved received a 10-season ban from SBBL games, and the 6 fans who assaulted 6 other fans were arrested for assault. After the situation was cleared up, the game continued, and Game 1 ended with a Hawks 123-109 victory. Game 2 ended with a Bears 119-118 victory. Game 3 ended with a Hawks 117-111 victory. The Rutherford Hawks have now landed a spot in the March Madness Championship. In the championship, the first-seeded Rutherford Hawks from the Belvedere Conference are taking on the third-seeded Coles Guardians from the Borealia Conference. Cody Tompkins goes street preaching during his spare time. On the day before Game 1, he was street preaching in Antioch, which is where the March Madness Championship is being hosted. As he was street preaching, there came a drunkard who felt hopeless. He was receptive to the gospel, and then he began following Jesus Christ, and therefore got saved. After he got saved, he then went to a rehab center to overcome his alcohol addiction. Cody Tompkins also shared about the street preaching when he was asked about it one day. In the March Madness Championship, Game 1 was just getting started, and this game was a tough one. The fans spent more time on their feet than sitting down, and people across the two countries were throwing March Madness parties. The players were playing their best, and the Coast Guardians obtained a 122 to 121 victory. Then in Game 2, things got more heated as the players were making very awesome plays and delivering best performances. The Hawks obtained a 114 to 103 victory in this one. Now it comes down to this, the beloved Game 3. This game was projected to be the most watched in history, and ticket prices to this game were at an all-time high. There were even wealthy fans who bought tickets to Game 3, who were bragging about it. As Game 3 started, the game was as competitive as it could get. The game was so tight that fans spent almost all of their time on their feet. The commentators made impressive predictions about the outcome of the game. Near the end of the game, the score was 125 to 125. And then, as there was just 2 seconds left in the game, Cody Tompkins scored a game-winning three-pointer, and the Hawks achieved a 108 to 125 victory over the Guardians. In the post-game interview, Cody Tompkins gave glory to Jesus Christ and shared the gospel as well. After this, the Hawks have now won their 5th championship.